Hello everyone, in this video I will walk you through pod security policy, which is one of the very important topics for the Certified Kubernetes Security Specialist exam. So let's get started. So a pod security policy is a cluster level resource that controls security sensitive aspects of the pod specification. And the pod security policy defines a set of conditions that a pod must run in order to accept it into the system, as well as defaults for the related fields. So just to elaborate more, as you know, everything runs as a pod or a deployment. So even if it's a deployment, we can define policies, and all the policies when you create the deployment or a pod, it must adhere to. So you can define like run as which user, whether privileged mode is allowed or not. So all these conditions you can specify. So there is a link, so if you open that link, you will come to the respective page, and this is all we need to know for the exam as well. So if you just search for pod security policy, this is a global search. So if you do a global search for the pod security policy, you will come to the same page, and this page is all we need for the exam as well, and it talks about like what are conditions are available and all. So it's a pretty it's a decently long article, but for the exam, everything that you need to know I will be covering in this video. So this is how this design looks like. So what we have is first we create for example a pod security policy, and then that pod security policy is attached to a cluster role. This is step 2. Then we create for example, within a namespace, let's say you have a prod namespace and you have team specific namespace, you would have service account in that namespace. This will be step 3. And finally, you bind service account with the cluster role using a cluster role binding. So this will this is how the pod security policy through cluster role binding gets implemented for a namespace like this. And once that happens, all the pods, everything will be using the rules as defined in the pod security policies like this. So these pods will actually start. So this automatically these rules will be enforced on this particular namespace. So this is the overall design of this pod security policies and how they are linked together. So just we have to remember the cluster role binding is the common object which links your pod security policies and the service account, and that's how it get enforced at the namespace level. So this is a 7-step process. The process are pretty fast, so I'll just quickly walk you through. So we create a pod security policy, cluster role, service account, cluster role binding, and we enable the plugin in Kube API server, and then we'll just test it. So the major steps are only the top 5 steps, or top 4 actually. So these are the 4 steps, and we have to enable the plugin also. And for this demo, for example, I'm creating a pod security policy, and this is the name. So okay, so this is the name. So I'm saying prevent privileged pods. So this pod security policy will not allow any privileged pod to be started. So it's saying privilege being false, and other things are okay, like run as user, run as any, all those things, but not run as root, and which volumes are allowed. So this is I have taken from the document example doc which I showed, the Kubernetes documentation. So main condition is privilege should be false, and then I can just create this pod security policy. So I'll just copy this snippet of code and paste it. So this pod security policy has been created. You can ignore this warning. Still, it's part of the exam. So it's still it will be unavailable from 1.25, but still as part current curriculum, it's still part of the exam, and it's one of the important questions actually for the exam. So next we will be creating a cluster role, and herein I am creating a cluster role, and I'm giving a name like prevent privileged pods cluster role, and I'm saying resource. So this is the resource, like what resource it's attached to, pod security policies, and it can use this ClusterRole can use this particular pod security policy which I just created in my previous step. This was the name which I gave, like prevent privileged pods. So this was the pod security policy which I created in previously. So I can copy this and create the ClusterRole. So the ClusterRole has been created. Next, I will create a service account, and just pay attention. This service account will be living in this namespace. So I will be creating a namespace and creating a service account. So the command is kubectl create SA and a namespace. So it's very small command. So I'll copy this and create the service account. So the service account has been created. Next, as I mentioned, we have to bind the service account with the ClusterRole. So this is how it looks like. So we say create ClusterRole binding, and this I'm giving a name, and I am binding ClusterRole which I created previously with this service account. So this will link the policy enforcement. So I can create the ClusterRole binding object, and the ClusterRole binding object has been created. Now I just have to enable the plugin. This you can do it before or later, it doesn't matter, but I'm doing it at the end. So for this, I have to enable plugin, and it's in Kube API server. So if I come down, it's at the plugin level. So I can add pod, and it's all case sensitive. It should be exactly like this, pod security policy, and I can save and exit. So once I add that, my Kubernetes server kubelet would automatically restart, and I just have to wait for it to come online. So I'll just let it run. So the server has come online. I can just do the test now. So just for this, I'll just try to create 2 pods, and one will be like privileged pod by giving privilege being true, and another will be regular because default is false. So the first one should fail and the second one should pass. So I just copy paste this in my terminal. So the first one, as I mentioned, is failing because the privileged containers are not allowed as per the pod specification or pod security policy, and the second one, which is non-privileged, is allowed. So if you want, you can if you want to clean up all the object, it's optional, but anyway, I like to keep things clean. So I'll just delete all the objects that I created for this demo. So that's all I wanted to cover for pod security policies. Thanks for watching. Bye.